Welcome to Cooking with Kohl, episode 2. I'm your host, Jacob Kohl. Today will be how to make sourdough bread, part 2B. We're going to be mixing the dough today, so stay tuned. All right, welcome back. Couple things. I'm using the microphone just to get the best audio. I'm waiting for Dustin Devlin and Jared Larner to help me out with their equipment and their skills, so bear with me until that happens. And today's episode, you'll see some different clips. It's been filmed from a couple different days, but doesn't matter. You're gonna learn how to do this anyways. So it's morning time. It's been about 12 hours. I have my leaven over here, should be ready, and my starter should be also good to go. Let's check them out and let's get into it. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at the starter. This one's gonna have a whole bunch of bubbles. It had a lot of yeast in it, just around the sides, and you can see it expanded quite a bit. And if you pull it off from the sides, you can see more of the bubbles. So this is definitely nice and healthy. It's ready to go in the fridge. And if I don't make bread in the next week, I'll just got to remember to feed it. Okay, now let's take a look at the leaven. Now this one, because you only used a tablespoon and put it in a clean container, there wasn't as much yeast in there. So, but it did rise. When you look on the sides, you'll see quite a bit of bubbles. Okay, so the leaven, I can't really explain to you when it's ready. That's something you have to learn. It took me a long time to do this. You know, looking at the bubbles and how much it expanded is one way, but that needs to be at the right time. If you use the leaven too early, your bread may not rise or not come out right. If you wait too long and the leaven's been eating for too long, it's also going to screw up the end product. So it's something that you just got to learn over time. So let's get the rest of the supplies. You're going to need your leaven, AP flour, whole wheat flour, and a container that holds at least 2.5 quarts. You're also going to need some water, some salt, and a scale. So start with making sure your water is nice and warm. If you're going to temp it, get it to about 80 degrees. Put your container on the scale, zero it out. Add 700 grams of that water. And then add 200 grams of your leaven. Another good indication that your leaven is ready to mix the dough is that it's going to float. You can see here. That's because there's a whole bunch of air bubbles in there. So now you could use a spoon or your hand, just mix all that together. And now you're going to add all your flour. So add 900 grams of the all-purpose flour. And that's going to bring you to 1800, and another 100 grams of the whole wheat. Now you're going to want to mix all this up. Now for this, definitely use your hand. Your hand will be good to be able to squeeze everything together. You're going to want to dig to the bottom, get all that dried flour mixed in. So this will take a little while. But most importantly, you want to make sure it's good and mixed, because this is the kind of the main part of getting all this stuff together. Now scrape that off your hand and cover it. And now this is going to do a little rest for like 20 to 30 minutes. And now you're going to add your salt and a little bit more water. So put the container back on, zero it out. You're going to add 50 grams about of warm water and 20 grams of salt. And now you got to squeeze all this together. When you mix this, because of the water you've added, it's going to be all kind of slippery and it's not going to seem like it's going to combine, but you just got to keep squeezing it together and it'll eventually combine. Get all that salt mixed in there. Now at the end of this part, I know it talks in the book about doing this, is kind of do turns, which I'll explain in a second, and punch down. So you want to grab from the bottom, push it to the top, and punch down. Okay. Scrape it off, let it sit for a half hour, and come back. And now we're going to do our first turn. So every half hour, you're going to be doing turns. Reach from the bottom, pull it up, and drop it onto the top. Give it a turn, grab another little bit, pull it up, put it down. Do about 3 or 4 of these. Okay, so this is a turn when you're doing these. You do 3 or 4, you've done a turn. Then you're going to let it sit for a half hour, come back. So every half hour you're doing this. Now, an important thing to do is, after you're mixing the dough with your hand, rinse it all off. Get all that dough off your hand. Get it out of the sink. Anywhere where that dough sits, it's going to turn into like cement. So just make sure you rinse your hand good. But again, every half hour, you're going to do this turn again. For the first, I think it says 2 hours. You can be kind of rough with it. After the first 1.5 or 2 hours, you want to be more gentle, because the air bubbles are going to be building up in there. This is your first rise. It's going to be slowly rising. So after the first couple hours, just be gentle when you do your turns. But this is the essential mixing of the dough. Okay, so it's been about 5.5 hours, but I don't have any more time. Usually I don't bulk ferment this any more than 6 hours, so it's about its time anyways. It didn't rise as much as I'd like to, but it could be from a number of things. But I'm going to make the loaves, and then it's still going to rise after I put it in the baskets. But I want to show you, this is a trick I learned, well, in the book he does tell you how it starts to look a little more shiny, and it is a little more billowy. It did rise a little bit. Sometimes you'll see holes along the side of the container. There's not too many, so I don't know how good this one's going to come out, but I'm just going to make the loaves, and hopefully it'll keep rising, and then I'll cook it later tonight. Alright, let's dump it out. Alright, be very gentle when you dump it out. You don't want to bust all the air bubbles out. Okay, I've dumped it out. For this part, a bench scraper is a great tool to shape them into the loaves and to cut it in half. You're going to need a little more all-purpose flour. Okay, so I like to do a little room here. Okay, so give it a dusting on the top. And take your bench scraper and cut it right in half into 2 different sizes. Okay, flip them over. Now you're essentially just closing off that gap and making a crust. So I cut it, you want to kind of close off all the spots that were exposed and not floured. I don't really get this part too much from the book. I kind of just do how I think, do what I think is right, but there we go. Flip them over, and then if it's still, if you haven't floured it too much and there's a stick on the bottom, you can kind of pull, pull and turn it, and it tightens it up. But you don't want to work, I guess, too much with them at this point. You can use this too to push and then pull, and that's also making it into a nice little tight loaf. So we're essentially just kind of shaping them right now, and then we're going to do our folds after they rest. This has to rest for like 20 to 30 minutes. Just cover them with a towel. You don't want any drafts or anything to cool them down too much. So now I'm going to let them sit for 20 to 30 minutes, and then we're going to do the folds. After this, you're going to need, if you don't have bread baskets, just use bowls about this size, and then get some kitchen towels. So you don't have to use these, you can just use a big salad bowl. But you need 2 bowls. You're going to need 2 towels. I'll use this one here. And then you're also going to need, all right, it looks like amount of rice flour. I usually have a 50-50 rice and wheat flour mixture. I'm going to do just wheat and then some all-purpose, I guess, too. I think I will get some more rice flour before I bake these tonight, though, because you put the rice flour right in the bottom of them before they go in the Dutch oven. I'm going to flour this towel. Once I do the folds, I'm going to put them in the baskets and then let them sit out. I'll let them do another rise, like for 3 or something hours, and cook them tonight. All right, another trick is to immediately soak or clean this container. If you don't, all that flour and water mixture is going to get stuck to the sides of here, and it gets really cementy and dried up. So I like to, if I don't clean it right away, I'll just soak it and clean it when I have time. All right, the last part here is going to be doing our folds. I do this kind of fast, so just kind of pay attention. So flour your other toweled basket. Flour the tops of both the loaves. Flip one over. Grab from the bottom facing you. Pull towards yourself. Stretch it over the top about 2/3 of the way. Then grab the bottom of each side and do the same thing. Fold over, fold over. Grab the top, fold towards you. Grab the bottom again and flip it over. Now roll it into a tight ball. Again, you can use the surface if the part of the dough is still sticky. It'll help it tighten up. And then flip it over so the crust to the top is facing down in the basket, and cover it with part of the towel. And do the other one. Pull from the bottom towards you, fold it over, the sides, fold, fold. Top, fold over. Roll it so that bottom is now on the top. And roll it into a nice tight ball. And again, that top part, which is the top of the loaf, face down. Okay? And put them somewhere to sit. All right, thank you for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, subscribe. And stay tuned for part 3, which will be baking the loaves.